Today is April the 18th. I am Sean O'Brien, the Kingston Town Moderator. Seated to my right is Keith Hickey. Hi, how are you?
Sean, I'm well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent.
We're here to preview the annual town meeting, which will be April 29th at 9 a.m. at the Kingston Intermediate School. It starts, like I said, right at 9 a.m. We need a quorum of 100 people to begin the meeting, so we're going to go through all the articles with you here today. We'll also discuss the consent agenda, which is a way to try to move the meeting along on articles that routinely will pass. I'm anticipating at least 3 consent agendas, and I'll address that as we go through the articles. So it's important that you're at town meeting at the beginning, because something you might want to, debate or discuss could be on the consent agenda, and it could be done by the time you get there at 10 o'clock. So please, the meeting starts at 9. Please be there for the start of the meeting. And without further ado, are you ready to go through the articles?
Happy to.
And the favorite Article 1 is the payment of prior bills.
So we've got $7,500 in prior year bills that needs 80% approval by the voters to expend outside of the fiscal year they were incurred in. So we're asking the voters to allow us to expend that $7,500.
Okay. And Article number 2 is a supplemental budget, school budget.
So people may have seen in the newspaper or online, the school department has a deficit in their fiscal 23 budget, this current year's budget, primarily because of unanticipated special education costs. Board of Selectmen, School Committee worked together to come up with a way to best address that shortfall. So what we're proposing is taking $650,000 from free cash to allow the school committee to have some additional funding for their fiscal 23 budget to make up most of the deficit that they have.
Okay. And has there been any cuts or anything as a result, or they're just trying to prevent those cuts?
The school department has made some cuts in their fiscal 24 budget in the last couple of weeks. But again, because special education costs have continued to increase, they've had to budget more appropriately in fiscal 24 for what they know of for special education expenses in fiscal 24.
And the town can't cut the special education budget, correct?
No, this town is required to provide, specific types of support services for special education.
Okay. And that was a favorable vote by the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. Moving on to Article number 3, which is a supplemental budget for the fire department.
So we have a couple of things that we're asking for the fire department. The town of Kingston was fortunate enough to get a grant from the state of Massachusetts for a generator. What we're looking for, unfortunately, like a lot of things, the generator costs have increased. So we're asking the public to allow us to spend another $3,700 on a generator that will match, I think it's a $10,000 grant from the state. The reason we're not including it in the fiscal 24 budget is this money has to be spent, the state money has to be spent before June 30th of 23, or we lose that. So we're asking the public to support the expenditure of $3,700. We also have about $10,000 in AED supplies. We have AEDs in a variety of buildings around the town. We need to upgrade those AED supplies so we have properly operating AEDs in town and school buildings. We're trying to get that done as quick as we can, so that's what that money is for.
And that was favorable by the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen in this.
It is.
Moving on to your bread and butter, Article number 4 is the general operating budget of the town.
Yeah, again, you've seen a lot of discussion, I think, about the amount of money we're spending, and it's a significant amount more than in previous years. Some of that's because of the school department. They're seeing a lot of that offset by state revenues. Some of the town expenses that we're seeing that have increased, again, utility costs, electricity costs, gasoline, diesel fuel, things of that nature. Some of our employee benefits have increased a bit more than they have in the past. So there is an increase in the overall budget. The impact of people's taxes is just over 4%.
Okay, and what's the increase from last year, roughly,
Dollar-wise,
percentage?
percentage-wise, it's about a 4% increase, just over a 4% increase in spending.
And have taxes and revenues increased as well since last year?
Taxes will increase with this budget, a small amount. There are additional revenues that we're also seeing that we're able to offset this budget for as well, but there will be a little bit of an increase in people's property taxes if this budget's approved as presented.
Okay. And I can see the Board of Selectmen is unfavorable to the budget, and the Finance Committee is favorable. Do you know what the contention is between the two departments?
Really, the sole contention at this point between the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen is the hiring of 4 firefighters. What's been proposed by the fire chief is looking to hire firefighters partway through fiscal '24 to address some of the additional demands within the fire department or on the fire department with increased calls, those types of things. The Board of Selectmen is in favor of that. The FinCom, with all the other changes and challenges we've had, is not. The figures that you have in front of you in this budget are the FinCom figures. So there'll be some discussion, I assume, between the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, or some debate potentially at town meeting for those firefighter positions.
So that's it's not replacing people who have retired or
No,
left
sir.
the job, those 4 new positions?
It's 4 new positions, and really the reasoning behind the 4 is we have 4 different staffing groups or shifts, so we would add 1 person to each shift. There was talk about potentially adding 2, which I think the fire chief would be happy to take if that's all he could get, but in a perfect world, having the same number of people on every shift just makes the operation of the department when they're responding to a call easier and more concise than it would be having 5 guys on some shifts and 6 on another.
And do you know roughly what the increase, I'm guessing that's coming from public safety, what the
Yes.
increase to that budget would be?
So the budget, again, it was for a portion of the year. It was a couple $100,000, roughly $200,000 for half a year for 4 firefighters.
Okay. And at town meeting, I will, when we go to the budget, I'll go through each general government, public safety, the schools. I'll call each one. If there's a hold, then we can pull it aside and debate it, and then we can pass what we have on the budget and go back to, say, it's just public safeties.
In the town meeting, if I could, the town meeting handout will be done later this week. It'll be on the website, hopefully certainly by this Friday. That will have a breakdown, in much greater detail of all the different departments, what their wages are, what their operational costs are. So you'll be able to get a better sense what some of the increases are in any of the areas of this summary budget of $52 million. So that should be out, like I said, by the end of the week, so people will have at least a week to review it, try to get some if they have any questions, and they can always certainly reach out and either speak to you or myself. Happy to try to help them out.
Awesome. The next 3 articles, I'm considering putting on a consent agenda. That's Article 5, 6, and 7. Article 5 is the wastewater department's enterprise fund. And Article 7 is the wastewater department enterprise fund and budget. So what do you?
Yeah, so, their operational budgets for water and wastewater, there are no projected costs increase in the user fees. So, whatever we're paying right now, whatever a person's paying right now for, they're not going to see an increase in their per cubic yard expense. So that's good news. Not a lot of huge changes in either one of those budgets. And they like I said, they're able to be afforded with the current rates, which is great. Article 6 is replacement of a water main, a portion of a water main on Main Street. The water department has some savings from prior year warrant articles. They've got available money in retained earnings, and they've also come to the Board of Selectmen and received $922,000 in ARPA money. So That project will be paid for strictly by cash. There'll be no bonding or borrowing of any kind for that particular article. So it's a needed improvement, and the Water Commissioners found a creative way to make it work without having to borrow.
Do you know roughly how long that project will take to?
I would say, I don't have an exact date. I would suggest to you it's probably going to take the lion's share of a construction season, certainly.
Okay. And that's why we're putting this on a consent agenda. I like when the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee all agree.
Yep.
It generally passes town meeting. This would be something to move the meeting along and still, save time for
Yep.
things that should be debated.
No question.
Intensely. So, moving on to Article number 8, and that is the wastewater leaching fields. I don't know, I put my glasses on. Does that say 12 million?
It does say
Okay.
12 million.
Can you explain what we're doing with $12 million here?
Sure. The wastewater department's had a long time goal of constructing a leaching field up near Indian Pond. This would be for the construction of a complete leaching field. If it were to be constructed, it would take the existing leaching field that's underneath the driving range at Indian Pond offline to let it rest. It's about 20 years old. In proper planning for wastewater, I guess, a leaching field should be rested after about 20 years. In speaking to the wastewater commissioners, they will not move forward with this project unless they get either the majority of the project is either paid for either through state grants or state revolving loan funds. So again, their intention, just like they were with the last phase they completed a couple of years ago, they intend to have just the new users basically repay the cost of constructing this leaching field, not increase rates at all, which is helpful. The challenge we're facing right now is without this leaching field, the fourth tank in the treatment plant can't be put online, and ultimately any significant new users that are in need of wastewater can't be serviced. So to some degree, some of the larger growth in town would be stopped for at least a period of time.
So the town, it's up to $12 million, but that doesn't mean that's not what they want to borrow?
No, so we have to have raise and appropriate up to our expense amount, which is what the $12 million is for. The sewer commissioners, I think, are very intent in not moving forward if this were to pass, if we couldn't get a lot of these costs paid for, like I said, through either a grant or a low-interest loan through the state.
And if there is a loan, does that go on the water department's budget, or is that?
Sewer department.
Sewer department's budget?
Yes,
So
sir.
that's not part of the general budget,
Nope.
operating budget?
It won't be.
And do you know if there's any requests from companies or builders that want, to pay to get that other tank up and running?
We have a lot of.
Commitments is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, no, we have some developers in town who are looking for commitments. Certainly at Sacred Heart High School, there's a site out there for the Sacred Heart High School. They're looking to potentially put some housing units there. The old Edwards site, or the existing Edwards site, they're looking to put some housing units there. So there's 3 or 4 different locations in town that are interested in some larger residential developments that at this particular time aren't going to be able to move forward without municipal sewer, which we don't have capacity for at this point.
Understandable. And that was a Finance Committee favorable vote. Capital Planning was a 3-2, and the Board of Selectmen was a 3-2 vote. And that's a 2/3 majority vote at town meeting. See how that goes. Moving on, Articles 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 I'm considering putting in a consent agenda. These are all relatively routine articles, so let's just go through them. Article 9 is the Renewable Energy Enterprise Fund budget. Article 10 is the revolving funds. Article 11 is transfer to employment liability reserve fund. Article 12, transfer to other post-employment health insurance liabilities fund. Articles 13, transfer to stabilization fund. Article 14, transfer to capital stabilization fund. And Article 15 is transfer to municipal building insurance fund. Ready, set, go.
Yeah, so those are kind of housekeeping items. They're, because we're in good financial condition, we've got some money that we have historically in Kingston set aside in some stabilization accounts to address liabilities that we may be facing in the future as far as the OPEB liability, the post-employment liability. We're looking to fund the capital stabilization fund, and we'll talk about that briefly in Article 17, which is the capital article. We set money aside every year to help fund that. And the employee benefit is, again, we have employees leaving employment unexpectedly. We can't budget for those properly. We utilize that reserve account to fund the costs associated with that employee leaving through primarily accrued vacation time.
Okay. And what's the difference between the transfer stabilization fund and the transfer to capital stabilization fund?
So the stabilization fund is really the town's savings account that could be used after a town meeting vote for any purpose. The capital stabilization is only specific, because it's specifically capital, it can only be spent on capital type items.
Which we'll get to in Article 17.
Can't wait. Teasing that pretty well.
And we covered that, so. And these were all favorable votes
Yes.
by Board of Selectmen. And that's something that I think will move well on a consent agenda, but again, if they want to debate it, if people at town meeting want to debate it,
Sure.
they can pull it out and we can talk about them.
That's right.
So moving on to Article 16, and this is always a good one. It looks like someone's giving the town money back.
We are. So if you recall last year, the conservation agent and the Conservation Commission was seeking funding for a matching grant for the Elm Street Jones River Stormwater Project. And we said at that time that we had applied for a $100,000 grant. If we were successful in getting that grant, we would return the $100,000 back to free cash. Through the dedication and diligence of the conservation agent, we did get that $100,000 grant. What this is doing is reducing the amount of the appropriation by the $100,000 and returning that money into free cash.
Nice. And that was favorable votes by the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. Going on to the much anticipated Article 17. And again, that's capital equipment and projects funding by capital planning, and they list a host of new purchases, flooring replacement, vehicle replacement, protective clothing for the fire department, replace patrol cars. So there's a variety of things that they're trying to purchase there. And then there's a bunch of leased items that they've already had at town meeting, and they just got to continue to pay through the leases.
Yeah, so there's a 2/3 vote because we're looking to enter into a new lease for the repair of an ambulance or a replacement of the chassis of an ambulance. This article is very similar to what it's been in the last 2 or 3 years. As you mentioned, we're looking at paying for a number of different capital items. It's been through the Capital Planning Committee, who will be there to present the article and answer any questions. There's one, what I guess I would call fairly significant difference in this year's article than in the past, and that is that it's been recommended to expend an additional $500,000 on road and sidewalk improvements. Kingston historically has just used primarily funding from the state of Massachusetts every year to fund their road networks and the maintenance and those types of things. What we found, and anybody who drives around town, I think it's not hard to realize the condition of our roads overall are deteriorating. So with the work of the Streets and Parks Superintendent, he and I proposed to the Capital Planning Committee, ultimately the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, a request to expend $500,000 from free cash to make additional improvements in the roadways. We're going through an update in our road database now to identify the roads we want to spend that $500,000 on, along with the $700,000+ we get from the state. We'll make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen on where we want to spend those monies, and ultimately during the the construction season this summer, we'll be hopefully spending upwards of $1.2 million on necessary road and sidewalk improvements.
So the slightly different on this article this year, and I think we kind of did it with the ladder fire truck, is there's 3 items listed on here. The ambulances, a brush truck, and a one-ton dump truck. But it's not listed as a project, and I can see it's, to enter into leases. Why is it on the article this year if we're not ready to buy it?
Sure. So, not unlike a lot of car dealerships that don't have much of a selection when you go down and buy a new car, these heavy-duty vehicles that we're looking to acquire or get authorization to acquire take upwards of 2 years now to manufacture once they get authorization to start the build. And it's primarily because they don't have all the equipment that's needed to manufacture these ambulances or brush trucks or public works vehicles. So what we're asking is for a couple of things. We're asking to remount, refurbish ambulance 1 and 2. Ambulance 2, we'd look to finance in fiscal '24. In the Article 17, there's $71,000. There's money set aside for an ambulance. We're looking to get approval for the remounting and refurbishment of the ambulance 1, a brush truck, and a one-ton dump truck. So we can contact the manufacturer, tell them we have authorization to acquire it. They can plug those vehicles into their manufacturing schedule and get us something, in all likelihood, 2 years from now, knowing that if we waited till next year to actually lease those vehicles, it'd be 2 years from then. So we're trying to get on a more typical replacement schedule for these vehicles. Usually they take 8 to 12 months to get. Now they're upwards of 2 years, 2.5 years. So we're just trying to get authorization to expend. We won't start the leasing of those if we do lease them instead of paying cash until fiscal '25. But by having authorization to expend, we can then get on the manufacturer's list of vehicles to be constructed or built, and we'll get that sometime in fiscal '26 rather than having to wait till fiscal '27.
So this money's not coming out of, we're not paying for it this year?
No.
Great. Article number 18, equipment purchase project funding, majority vote.
These are minor, what we call minor equipment that we're looking to expend funds on. There's 11 of them right now. Some of the funds will come from unexpended articles from the past that we're just trying to eliminate. The rest come from free cash. They range from school, or a variety of school department needs to some fire and conservation needs primarily. Small projects overall. There's also a couple of larger project conservation's looking for. They're looking for $73,000 for MS4 permit compliance. And what MS4 is, it's the federal stormwater permit that the town of Kingston gets to collect stormwater in our drainage system and properly dispose of that or disperse of that, through our drainage system. We have to have some engineering work done on a regular basis. This $73,000 is for the hiring of an engineering firm to provide us the documentation we need to stay compliant with our stormwater drainage permit.
Okay, and you also listed about $24,000 that's coming back in.
Yeah, so there's $24,000 in unexpended articles. There's 8 or 9 of those, totaling, like I said, $24,000. What we're doing is saying, okay, we don't need the remainder of these articles that were previously appropriated. We want to reallocate those to offset the cost of these projects for this year, and the balance would just be coming from free cash.
Gotcha.
And more of a bookkeeping thing than anything else.
And all these projects were supported by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee.
They were.
Moving on to Article 19 is the Sampson Fund. Again, that isn't paid for by tax dollars. It just supports local projects. It's a trust that's been around for a long time, and it helps support local town projects, correct?
Yeah, so nonprofits can apply that are eligible for the Sampson Fund. The Sampson Fund gets a lot of similar requests every year, but they're funded for some sort of for community benefit. So we, are very appreciative to have that supplemental money to offset some budget costs.
And Article number 20, the Community Preservation Committee Administrative Budget Fund Appropriations Project. This is a article appropriates and reserves the community project funds 10% of each year's revenues for open space, historic preservation, and community housing. And there's a number of projects that are coming listed with that, correct?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of projects that community preservation considered. There were a couple of projects that weren't funded. The largest project dollar-wise this year, I think, is probably the boat ramp at $400,000. That boat ramp is the only public one in town, has been around for quite some time. It's in disrepair. It's an asphalt ramp that is no longer allowed because of environmental, excuse me.
Shellfish.
Shellfish.
I don't know if it's shellfish. I
Yeah,
just made that up.
it's something like that. So it'll be replaced at the end of the boating season with a cement ramp. So it was funded primarily through a CPC grant, along with probably close to 10 other projects.
And those are just, where do those projects come from?
They come from a variety of different departments in town and outside nonprofit groups that are eligible for historic preservation or recreation type programs. So we have, the majority of them are certainly town type projects, but there are some outside projects as well, or that are proposed and considered by CPC.
And looking at the votes, it's all favorable by the Finance Committee, by the Board of Selectmen, but the Finance Committee, not favorable votes. Do you know why?
Sitting in the Finance Committee meeting that night, I think it was a bit challenging. The chairman of the CPC was ill. Probably couldn't provide the Finance Committee with as much detailed information as they may have liked when they were making their votes that evening. So, whether there's some debate on the floor of town meeting or the Finance Committee wants to reconsider some or all their votes, I'm not sure at this point, but that was basically the biggest issue, I think, more than anything else.
And can you just explain where this money comes from and why it's spent this way?
Sure. So there was a warrant article passed several years ago at town meeting where a percentage of everybody's property tax bill, you get a surcharge, so to speak, on your property tax bill. That money comes in, gets transferred to the treasurer's office, and is credited to the the Community Preservation Fund to enhance the town in recreation, conservation, and other type projects that are eligible for expenditure of these funds. The Community Preservation Program is a state program in that they set the guidelines and parameters. They will oversee. I know the CPC had some questions this year on some projects and sought out counsel of the CPC representatives from the state to make sure that they were operating and making sound decisions based on the legislation they work under. Those funds are applied for every year, and the CPC board will award those funds based on what they believe the needs of the community are, based on a public hearing and funds available.
Okay. And moving on to Article 21, we're trying to bring the treasurer and the collector's position into one position?
Yeah, there's been talk about this in the past, and we're bringing this forward again for consideration. Kingston's had a couple of studies done in the past. suggesting changes and/or improvements in their municipal government to make it more efficient, more effective. The combination of the collector and treasurer has been something that's been discussed in the past, hasn't been approved in the past for various reasons. Really, the main reason to try to combine the positions and have them become appointed rather than elected is that when the position is open, and people would apply and ideally be, exceptionally qualified for the position to be hired rather than just be elected. I think Kingston's been exceptionally fortunate over the years to have some really quality people fill the roles of collector and treasurer in the past. But that doesn't have to be the case. So moving from elected to appointed makes, in my mind, a lot of sense, so you can just make sure that the people who are in those offices, who control the bulk of the money in Kingston, have the qualifications to do that. Secondly, combining the positions, again, there's some synergy there between, for both positions. You're obviously collecting and then investing and spending the money. So there's some synergy there to work together. If this was to be approved this year, the way it's written, the actual combination wouldn't occur for 3 years.
So you wouldn't be taking someone's job away?
No. So
elected.
we would be electing a treasurer this year. The collector has 2 more years left on their term. So at the end of the collector's term, 2 years from now, this legislation would require the town to bring somebody in on a temporary basis to serve as a collector for a year until the term of the treasurer expires, and once that expires, the hiring and combination of the positions would occur. It's kind of a lengthy, cumbersome process, but we're trying to work within the state law to do that, and give us a little bit of time to plan, and also again, as you mentioned, make sure that people who have run for the positions, are getting their 3-year term that they have signed up for and run for. So
This won't be a moderator appointment, I hope.
no, sir.
How will that, would that be through the Board of Selectmen?
Be through the town administrator.
Town administrator?
Yeah. Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen, if the town administrator bylaw that's proposed is approved, would have the ultimate authority to veto, so to speak, a hire. But it would be over the, just like any other department or employee would be, with the exception of police and fire chief.
Okay. And that was voted on by the Board of Selectmen 4-0, and Finance Committee was a 3-0-1. Moving on to Article number 22, elected officials' compensation. This is on every year. It doesn't look like there's a lot of changes to this article this year, but.
No, the one big change that I just want to point out on page 22 of the warrant is the collector and treasurer position right now, the recommended wage is right now to be determined. And really, it's going to depend on what happens with Article 21. Ultimately, I think what's going to end up happening is there'll be a motion to amend to have all 3 positions potentially be at the $86,000 salary that we're looking for the town clerk if the current tax collector does not win the treasurer's seat in the election. We have 2 people running for the treasurer's position. If the incumbent's not running, Mr. Pike, Carl Pike's been here for a while now, done an amazing job. He has chosen not to run. So there are 2 people running. One is the tax collector, current tax collector. One is another resident in town. If the current collector wins, what we'll look to do is to amend this article to include a salary for the treasurer and collector, but not be at the full $86,000 a position times 2. It'll be more mid-90s for both positions total.
Okay.
So depending on what happens with the vote on the previous article, we'll make a motion to amend this to get the appropriate numbers in there.
Not to get off the articles, but is there a town election coming up?
There is, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's this Saturday, the 22nd, down at the elementary school. You can come down all day long and vote, so please try to take advantage of that. We unfortunately only have one race that is, that there's a runoff on, so to speak, or it's contested, excuse me. That's the treasurer position. The other races for school committee, planning board, board of selectmen, and the other, maybe even moderator.
Yeah.
Is uncontested, so hoping we get a decent-sized turnout anyways, but if people want to come down, take 5 minutes and walk through and vote, that would be very much appreciated.
Nice. And moving on to Article, I lost my page. 23. Getting used to them.
Gotta put those glasses on.
Wage and personnel bylaws amendment and compensation schedule.
So again, this is to address or adjust the bylaw for wage and personnel for fiscal '23.
And moving on to Article 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Those are union contracts, correct?
Yeah, we have 5 unions in town, 5 separate union contracts in town, plus an agreement with the police lieutenants. We've come to terms and tentatively agreed on contracts with 4 of the 6. We have the Kingston employees, the 2 unions for the Kingston employees, the clerical and the public works employees that we have not come to terms with. We still have a week and a half, give or take, so we've left the articles in. If we are to come to terms with those articles, there'll be a motion on the floor during town meeting to raise and appropriate whatever the appropriate amount is. Right now, we don't have an amount. So right now, if you're looking at the warrant, those 2 articles show no amount of money for raise and appropriate because we just don't know what they are yet. The rest of the articles have been negotiated, and the terms of those articles are very consistent between the articles. What we've proposed and come to terms on is a 3.5% cost of living raise for employees for fiscal '24 and '25, and a 2% in fiscal '26 for all the unions. There are some adjustments based on the wage and benefit study that we finished last year and implemented that. One of the big things that the Kingston has talked about doing for a number of years now and just hasn't been successful is to modify the health insurance that we offer our employees here. The health insurance currently offered is expensive. In many cases, a couple of plans are no longer offered in most places, most communities, because of the cost. We've been able to negotiate those, the 2 of the more expensive health insurance costs away from town employees during the 3rd year of the contract. We've offered lesser cost plans. The benefits are probably roughly the same, but we're moving to a high deductible and HSA type plan, which people have seemed to become more and more comfortable with, as well as a benchmark plan, which is less expensive for the employee, less expensive for the town, and they can use some of their out-of-pocket savings to pay for whatever deductibles they have. So I think overall, I think that the collective bargaining agreements are fair for both sides, and are looking at longer-term savings with the changes in the health insurances.
So that's, we have numbers for Articles 24, 25, 26, 27. There's no numbers listed on Articles 28 and 29 because those contracts aren't negotiated. So if you don't come to agreement by town meeting, you're not going to move forward on these 2.
That's true. Yep.
The other ones will go forward on. And,
Yep.
probably, again, would move these as a consent agenda unless someone wants to take them out and debate them, but.
Sure.
So
They all are, we negotiated them at the board's direction, consistently across the board. So whatever type of compensation we gave, one group, we gave the exact same with everybody else, so.
And these were all, I don't see Finance Committee votes.
Finance
but
Committee is,
what is
they're meeting tomorrow night, the 19th of April. They have a handful of votes to be taken all of the collective bargaining agreements are part of that, those votes. So after the FinCom meeting tomorrow night, we'll update the warrant with their votes. The warrant now is on our website, if people want to take a look at it. We'll update that Thursday morning to reflect the votes of the FinCom and put it back on the warrant.
Plug in the website, I like it.
Love the website.
Article 30 is Waterways Improvement Fund appropriations, and that's,
So the waterways, they get their revenues through boat registrations and leasing of boat moorings, things of that nature. What the challenge they've had is there's been emergencies over the years where they haven't been able to access some of those funds in an emergency basis. This $35,000 that they're asking for is a new warrant article this year, and what that would do is it would allow, if there was some sort of an unexpected emergency or unexpected repair down there, they'd have up to $35,000 of the funds that they've received to expend during this upcoming fiscal year. Because they would go through the police chief, because he's responsible for the harbor master. So the harbor master would recommend to the police chief that we need to make a repair of a dock for X number of dollars. The police chief would either say yea or nay, and that process would work its way through the approval process here. So
that's like a safety net in addition to their budget?
yes.
It's almost like a credit card.
It is, and they've had times in the past where they've had high winds, flooding, and they've had damage to the docks, and there's been some challenging ways to try to figure out how to fix those.
Does that just move faster than having to come to you and the Board of Selectmen in case they need it quickly?
So they can't spend that money without an appropriation, so they haven't been able to access those funds unless there's been a special town meeting or something along those lines to allow them to access these funds. So I think it's really it's more of a safety feature. If there is something that's unexpected down there, they've got up to $35,000 to address those.
Nice. And that was Board of Selectmen 401, and Finance Committee was 5-0. Moving on to Article number 31 is increased property tax exemption for seniors and veterans.
So a few years ago, the state increased the exemption for seniors and veterans from $750 a year to $1,500 a year. It has never been changed from the $750 in Kingston. What was proposed, and everybody seems to be supportive of at this point, is incrementally increasing that $750 up to the $1,500. So what's been proposed is moving it from $750 to $1,000, starting in fiscal '24. And in the future, you'll probably see articles to try to increase that up to the full $1,500.
And that's, seniors can come down and they can work off a portion of their taxes, helping in various activities.
Absolutely.
Things for the town.
Yeah, so there's a senior work-off program that people can take advantage of to come down and help out, do some work. So we ask them what they want to do, if they have an interest, a hobby, things of that nature, and we try to place them where they're interested in being, and it's a great asset to have some of the seniors come in and help us out in a variety of different ways. So it's nice to work with them to have that occur.
And that was favorable. Moving on to Article 32, again, this is with seniors and the tax deferrals from 6% to 4%.
So again, based on, people seniors who are in need of a tax deferral, the town provides those. The Board of Assessors has suggested reducing the interest rate we charge from 6% to 4%.
So
it's less cost, it costs a senior less money to defer the taxes. Ultimately, if you, in your advanced stage, decide to, well, the glasses kind of give it away. If you decide you need to defer your taxes and you're eligible to do that, your taxes will be deferred. When you sell your property, the money that's been deferred will be paid to the town at 4% interest rather than 6%. So it's a little bit of a cost savings for those who are in need of assistance.
But it's probably it's a lien, and it gets paid when the property is sold.
Yep. Try to keep people in their homes as long as they want to be.
And moving on to Article 32, again, increase gross receipts for seniors' tax deferrals. And that looks like they're just trying to change the numbers from up to 64,000.
Yeah, so we're, again, depending on who's, there's the amount people are eligible to earn. We're looking to modify that and have it be consistent with the Commissioner of Revenue establishes that every year. So it would be moving, it would be moving every year, and we are looking to increase the gross receipts. So more people can qualify potentially, ideally, than do now because of income.
My favorite article is Article 34.
Well, it should be. So Article 34, one of the things that when I was hired a couple of years ago and it's been discussed is trying to bring forward a bylaw for the town administrator. So I asked town council for recommendation of wording that are used in other communities, and came up and they provided this basic article. It's been modified to be more Kingston friendly. I think as everybody probably is aware, you know, there's a strong police and fire chief here that report directly to the Board of Selectmen. That's been taken into consideration in this, and there's no change there. What it really does is identifies in more specificity the responsibilities, authority of the town administrator position, as well as, you know, what happens if there's it needs to be an interim administrator, something of that nature. So there really is not a lot of changes to what my responsibilities or the responsibilities of the town administrator position is now, with the exception that this does provide a little more authority over the day-to-day personnel decisions than there is no bylaw now for the town administrator of the town of Kingston.
What have you been doing the last 3 years?
There's a contract, well, it's hard to say. There's a you know, I have a contract, and in that contract, it speaks in very general terms what the responsibilities are. This provides the terms in much more detail that I think is a benefit to the community, certainly a benefit to me, and everybody can understand what I'm supposed to be doing, so they can't ask me what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
There might be an amendment for the first Friday of every month for you to watch the O'Brien children, but we'll cross that at town meeting. And this was favorable by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0, so it's just a list of duties of your job, responsibilities, and it's just reduced to writing.
Yeah, most every town has this now. So yeah, to your point, it's simply, here's how things are gonna work in a variety of different instances with the town administrator position, and so everybody understands and can see what the administrative position is responsible for.
And moving on to Articles 35, that's an amendment to general bylaws, counseling on aging. And they're just trying to reflect their duties and.
Yeah, they're updating. If you look at the general bylaw now, it's like a paragraph, maybe two. They're trying to expand upon that a little bit to make the bylaws a little bit more accurate into today's activities and the responsibility levels on the Council on Aging Advisory Committee, things of that nature. So, again, not really looking to change anything significantly by any stretch of imagination, just trying to better define, you know, what the rules and regulations of the Council on Aging and their advisory board are.
And similar to Article 36, the Affordable Housing Trust amendment to their general bylaws.
Yeah, they're just trying to make it a little more broad on who can serve on the committee, because we've had challenges at times trying to fill that board, so they proposed that.
And Article 37 is amendment to the general bylaws for the Wetlands Protection Bylaw.
So again, what the Conservation Commission is trying to do is just better define and protect the conservation assets of the town of Kingston, based on current state statute and whatnot. So this, I think, better defines what somebody can and can't do in and around wetlands.
And if there's, I'll probably put 35, 36, and 37 on the consent agenda, and if they need to be debated, then they can remove those from the
Sure.
consent agenda. Moving on to Article 38, Amendment to the General Bylaws, Land Clearing Bylaw.
So, what the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board are looking to try to do here is prevent unpermitted and unnecessary destruction practices on property in Kingston. Anybody who's been here for a while has seen land clearing that potentially could have led to something and hasn't, so you've got large tracts of land that have been cut, which impacts the environment. So what the Conservation Commission and Planning Board are trying to do is to eliminate or significantly reduce the risk of having somebody come in and clear cut property and leave it in that condition.
Do we have a definition of what clear cut property means? I mean, if I cut down 4 trees in my backyard, is that considered clear cutting, or?
So my answer is no, and I think their answer would be no as well. I will try to provide a better definition of what clear cutting means to that, so thank you for bringing that up.
Just figured it could be just thought of that when I.
Yep, no, it's a good point. It will be in the town meeting handout, I can assure you of that.
Okay. And that was favorable votes by Conservation, Planning Board, and the Board of Selectmen. Moving on to Article 39. This is the naming of town property bylaw.
So what, the Board of Selectmen have sponsored this. They're looking to have any town property that a board and/or commission are responsible for. If they're interested in naming that property, that there's a process to do that, so it's consistent from board to board.
The Keith Hickey Town Hall.
I hope not. No, sir, not interested.
Article, let me check to see how that was. Board of Selectmen favorable 5-0. Moving on to Article 40, transfer of town-owned land to conservation. Favorable by the Board of Selectmen, and there's a whole bunch of tax title parcels listed that I don't know of.
Yeah, there'll be maps. Again, there'll be some supporting information in the town meeting handout. The conservation agent has put together a pretty sound response to wanting to try to better protect some of the conservation properties in town. A lot of these particular projects or parcels that we're looking at right here abut some permanently conserved lands in town. So what they're trying to do is better protect and enhance the amount of conservation property in Kingston.
And that was, like I said, favorable. Moving on to Article 41, petition for street acceptance. I think it's Cedar Street.
Yeah, Cedar Street is an unaccepted roadway, was not constructed to town standards. They've had some challenges down there, and they've asked and submitted a petitioned article to have this road be accepted by the town of Kingston as a public way.
So what happens when the town accepts a road?
We take ownership of it, and we are responsible, the town is responsible for maintaining that road moving forward. The challenge we have with Cedar Street, frankly, and also one of the properties in Indian Pond, is there hasn't been a layout of the roadway, so we don't know exactly what property the town of Kingston is taking ownership of. So there's typically a process that a developer will follow to get the roads within a subdivision accepted. They'll obviously finish the subdivision. They'll do what they call an as-built plan, which will show where all the drainage is and where the road layout is. It's an engineered and surveyed plan. And they bring that forward to the planning board and ultimately to the Board of Selectmen to consider, hold a public hearing for, and then ultimately bring it to town meeting for voter consideration. These two particular roads have not been, Cedar Street's a little bit different, and obviously than Indian Pond. It's a very old road, been around a long time. The challenge they're having right now is at the bottom of Cedar Street, there's an area of the roadway where some drainage improvements need to occur, that they feel, the owners, and they can speak to this, I don't want to put words in their mouth, think that there's some responsibility of the town to, when they allowed, or the zoning board approved a variance to build a home where a lot of the water used to drain onto that property, and no longer can. So they're bringing this forward to town meeting, asking for the town to consider taking ownership of the property.
Okay. I guess we'll hear from them. But it's not favorable by the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board. 42 is stop signs, a three-way stop sign. And let me see what street that is.
Landing Road and Maple.
Maple Street and Landing Road.
So,
Again, this petitioned article.
yeah, it was a petitioned article. It's advisory only. The petitioners would like to, that they believe there's a safety concern to the motoring public at the intersection of Landing Road and Maple. It's been considered in the past. The town has worked with Old Colony Planning Council to do the due diligence to determine whether or not there's a need for a three-way stop sign there. It was decided at that point that there wasn't. I received an email from a resident 3 or 4 months ago, I would guess, asking for the same. So spoke to the police chief, reached out to Old Colony Planning again. They're up in the process of updating their numbers to determine whether or not they feel as though this intersection is worthy of a three-way stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than ultimately the Board of Selectmen are the road agents, road commissioners. So this would be advisory only, even if it were to pass. This isn't the appropriate process to have a stop sign erected, frankly, but they certainly have the ability to submit a citizen's petition, and those citizens' petitions have to go on the warrant. So this is on the warrant for that reason.
Okay. Article 43 is the petitioned article to fund a Veterans Memorial here at the Kingston Townhouse, correct?
Yes, it's $187,000, almost $188,000 to construct a Veterans Memorial. In the front of the townhouse, it was brought to community preservation, and that was one of the projects that didn't get funded because of a lack of funding, amongst other issues, I think. Also, ultimately, they've asked to see if the town would use some of their free cash to fund this project, and they've got a presentation, and they have some as-built drawings and whatnot that they have done, and again, will be in the town meeting handout for backup information.
And that'll be on the website?
Yep, absolutely.
Friday, Saturday?
By Friday of this week.
Locking yourself into it.
I am.
And that is a Board of Selectmen 401. Moving on to Article 44. I think we started this. This is it as built for Country Club Way, acceptance of the street, correct?
So, yeah, so Cedar Street, and this is similar in nature. The difference between Cedar and this, Country Club Way is the developer is still, building out there. He's got about $130,000 to $40,000 escrow account with the town. We are, I believe, are going to move forward to try to take what we need to have the property surveyed and as-built provided to us. Sometime this spring, with the hope that this would have the information needed to be brought to a town meeting in the fall.
I was gonna, yeah, so that might not be quite ready.
So it's not quite ready yet, no.
Okay. Not favorable by the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board. Article 45 is transfer of town-owned land to conservation.
Not much more to say than that. There's a handful of properties that the Conservation Commission is looking to take responsibility for and manage. The board at this point just doesn't feel as though those properties are necessarily in the best use of those properties is conservation related.
And there'll be a map,
Yep.
I'm guessing, on
Yep.
45 too, by
Yeah.
Friday?
Yes, sir.
Article 46 is position, Eversource is over Tall Timbers Estates. That's a motion to move some wires underground. in the area of tall timbers, correct, through Eversource?
It is. Again, I think it's more, it's not something that can be enforced. I know the residents of Tall Timbers and Eversource are trying to work towards a resolution now that will satisfy both parties, so this may be heard, it may be passed over, I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Eversource has been notified? They're aware of
Yes.
the situation?
They are.
And that leaves us with kind of two articles left that are, got to do with the dirt, Articles 47 and 48.
So these articles are also citizen petitions. They are to allow earth reclamation to be exempt from zoning. Basically, the way that the zoning bylaw works is nothing is allowed unless it's expressly stated that it's exempt. The petitioners submitted this petition, I think, most specifically for the O'Donnell property that's had a tremendous amount of fill brought in to Kingston over the years. The town notified the owners of the property that they were violating zoning. The zoning board heard the case. The zoning board agreed with the zoning administrator. Since that time, the O'Donnell organization has brought the town of Kingston to court. We're awaiting a trial on that. What this would do is it will allow for the transportation in and I don't want to say disposal, that's probably not the right term, but they would be stockpiling fill, in Kingston.
Is this kind of like the big dig when they're not saying this project, they take
Yeah.
up large amounts from dirt and they just kind of need a place to dump it?
Yeah, so this is, it's been challenging because Mass DEP has been overseeing a lot of these sites where the fill has some contamination in it, but it's not contaminated enough to be contaminated soil. They're looking for locations across Massachusetts to rehome this dirt to. Kingston has been receiving this dirt now for a number of years. Through some recent court decisions, there was some case law developed indicating that it's a zoning bylaw in Kingston to accept this. So we've gone through the process of notifying the owners. They are challenging the town's decision, which they have the right to do. This bylaw would allow for this type of dirt to be brought into Kingston and stay in Kingston, moving forward.
Without town's approval?
Without town approval. We've been told by the petitioners that they at this point don't intend to move these articles forward at town meeting, but anybody at town meeting can move these articles forward. It doesn't have to be the petitioner. So, if people are concerned and have some interest in these articles, I'd suggest they attend town meeting and stick around.
You mean show up and vote?
Yes, sir.
Can't complain if you don't show up and vote.
That's what some people say, yes. We are this year trying to address as best we can people's challenges with daycare at town meeting. So through the board chair, we've worked with the YMCA to have daycare available at town meeting at the intermediate school. If people are interested in having daycare, you do need to sign up ahead of time. There is a fee, I think, of $25 a child. There's some information on our website. It's done through the YMCA. If you have any questions or can't find the information and you would like daycare, please reach out to the Selectman's office. We'll be happy to make sure that you get the information you need to reserve your daycare slot for your child or children.
It's good to have.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this.
Thank you.
And we have an election this weekend and then town meeting on the 29th, 9 a.m. at the Kingston Intermediate School. It's your town, it's your vote. If you're not here at town meeting, don't complain. You get to spend $53 million in hopefully under 4 hours. So please come out to the town meeting. Every vote matters, every voice matters, so I'd like to hear from you and see you there.
Thanks so
Anything-
much.
Anything to add?
No, I appreciate it. A lot of people have put a lot of work into what's going to be voted on the 29th, and I thank everybody who's running for public office, anybody who wants to volunteer to be on a board or committee. We desperately need people, so if you want to get involved, we certainly can find a spot for you.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you next weekend.